Continuing the 8.1 to 8.3 quiz review, we will work through finding the inverse of these functions. Remember, to find the inverse, you exchange x and y, you switch x and y, and then you solve for your new value of y. Now, a lot of these don't have a y in them. They have h of x or f of x. So a lot of times we'll actually just change that to y first, just so we can follow through with that. So in number 13, we are going to think of this as y equals, and so our inverse, we're going to switch x and y. So we'll say x equals 5, y plus 5. And now what we do is we use our algebra to solve for y. So we subtract 5 from both sides. And then we divide both sides by 5. When we divide both sides by 5, we can divide each term by 5. And so we can write this as 1/5 x minus 1 equals y, or y equals 1/5 x minus 1. Number 14, we're going to do a few of these because they're a little different. So f of x we're going to think of as y. And so for the inverse, we switch x and y. So it's going to say x equals negative 5y over 4. And when we have fractions, it's easiest here. There's a couple different ways to think through this, but we'll go ahead and get rid of the 4. And that gives us 4x equals negative 5y. And then we can divide both sides by negative 5. Right from the beginning, we could have just multiplied both sides by the reciprocal, which is actually quicker. I'm putting a negative on the outside there because a positive divided by a negative is just a negative. So y equals negative 4/5 x is our answer. Moving on to number 15. We're going to think of this as y. So our inverse, we switch x and y. And so this will say x equals 1 minus 2y cubed. And we want to solve for y. Well, we can subtract 1 from both sides. And we get x minus 1 equals negative 2y cubed. Divide both sides by negative 2. This time I'm just going to leave it in that form. I'm not going to split it off into the two terms. Oops. And that gives us y cubed equals x minus 1 over negative 2. And then we need to get rid of a cubed. So what's the inverse of cubing? Well, it's the cubed root. And for right now, I'm going to kind of go against one of our rules here, and I'm going to leave it in this form. It's not proper form because we have a fraction inside a radical. But our goal here is to be able to find the inverse, not necessarily put it in the correct form. All right, number 16. Once again, we'll think of g of x as y. And so our inverse, we're going to switch the x and y. So we will write x equals the 5th root of x minus 2 plus 2. Except I messed up there because I put x minus 2. We're switching x and y, so this needs to be y minus 2. And now we solve for y. So we want to get y by itself. So the first thing we do is we're going to subtract 2 from both sides, which gives us x minus 2 equals the 5th root of y minus 2. Now we want to solve for y, so we have to get rid of this 5th root. So we take both sides to the 5th power. So those cancel. So the 5th root cancels with to the 5th power. We are not going to multiply this out. This would be x minus 2 times x minus 2 times x minus 2 times x minus 2 times x minus 2. And that would take us quite a bit of time to multiply out. We're just going to leave it as x minus 2 to the 5th. And then the last thing we do is just add 2 to both sides. Now on the left, it can't be added inside here because this is to the 5th power, so we have to just leave it as x minus 2 to the 5th plus 2 is equal to y. And if we want to put y first, we just have y equals x minus 2 to the 5th plus 2. That is our inverse. All right, our last couple here are similar. They both have what we say rational functions in here. Once again, we'll think of this as y, and we'll switch our x and y for the inverse. And so we have x equals 4 over y minus 3 plus 1. And we want to solve for y. So what we'll do is we'll add 1 to both sides. Sorry, subtract 1 from both sides. And we get x minus 1 equals 4 over y minus 3. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky because we're not used to seeing this. But our y, which is what we want to solve for, is in the denominator. So what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply both sides by y minus 3. And in this case, we actually don't even need to do the FOIL on the left here. So right now we have y minus 3 times x minus 1 equals 4, because over here these cancel. Our goal is to get y by itself, so now we are going to divide both sides by the x minus 1. And that is going to leave us with, so the x minus 1 cancels. Over here we have y minus 3 equals 4 over x minus 1. And then lastly, we can just add 3 to both sides. And that's how you do number 17. We get y equals 4 over x minus 1. And plus 3. And we can't add those because they're not like terms. And we'll just leave it like that. And then number 18 is very much like 17. So you could try to mimic what we just did here for 17 for number 18.